Hello everyone and welcome to VLGA Connect for another week, sponsored by Hunt and Hunt Lawyers. It's our weekly look at news from around the Victorian local government sector, and with special guests we discuss current issues of interest. And today we'll have the VEC Commissioner Sven Bluemmel here to talk through the official report on the conduct of last year's council elections in Victoria and his recommendations for future elections. Also, we meet the Mayor of Strathbogie Shire Council, Ewart-Kennedy, and hear about some of the Shire's current challenges and priorities. But first up, let's check out the week's Connect News headlines. And the Mayor of Yarra City Council, Stephen Jolly, has been charged with assault following an incident at his local government election after party last November. Police confirmed the charge this week after a formal complaint was lodged in August. No injuries were reported from the alleged assault. Mayor Jolly has vowed to plead not guilty when the matter comes before Melbourne Magistrates Court in March, and he says he'll continue serving in his role as Mayor of Yarra City in the meantime. The tragic death of two people swept from Frankston Pier during extreme wind conditions on Wednesday has prompted Mayor of Frankston, Chris Bolam, to extend condolences to their families on behalf of the community. Frankston City Council is urging residents and visitors to heed Bureau of Meteorology warnings about strong gusts, rough seas and dangerous coastal conditions. The council has committed to enhancing beach and foreshore safety over the coming summer. The Victorian Government has appointed John Watson as the second municipal monitor for the city of Kingston, joining John Tanner AM, who was appointed in August. The monitor's term runs until December 31st. And Kingston says it's outraged by a state government decision to approve a controversial development of 941 homes on the former Kingswood Golf Course in Dingley Village. It says the decision was made despite overwhelming community opposition and environmental concerns. More than 20 sites in central Footscray with planning permits to build over 4,000 apartments are sitting idle, with some remaining undeveloped for more than 10 years, according to Maribyrnong City Council, and reported today by The Age. Council Chief Executive Celia Haddock has accused property owners of land banking and called for use it or lose it rules to be considered in Victoria's planning law review. Strathbogie Shire Council has updated its approach to Australia Day events following extensive consultation. The council will now support community-led Australia Day events through existing grant programs, with councillors able to attend if invited. East Gippsland Shire has dramatically improved its planning approval times. It says it's cut the median processing period from 84 days to just 43 days in the September quarter, and now approves 81% of permits within the legislated 60-day time frame. Hume City has elected its first ever youth council, with 12 young people chosen by more than 3,300 voters aged 11 to 17 across 19 polling locations. The newly elected members will be sworn in December and serve a 12-month term starting in January, with a $10,000 budget to deliver their priorities. Swan Hill Rural City Council has launched an expression of interest process to explore leasing or management options for the Swan Hill Regional Livestock Exchange. And Moorabool Shire has become the first local government in Australia to launch CityBot, an AI-powered service platform that provides 24/7 resident support with automatic translation across 70 languages. The initiative was delivered entirely by existing staff, without consultants or new roles, demonstrating what CEO Derek Madden calls trust-based leadership and innovation. And those are your Connect News headlines for this week. Don't forget to keep up to date with the Local Government News Roundup podcast 3 times a week, with news from across the country and beyond. It's available wherever you get your podcasts, and it's brought to you by the VLGA. Well, in the past week or so, the VEC has tabled its report on last year's Victorian Council elections to the Parliament, and we're going to unpack exactly what that report says now with our very special guest, the Victorian Electoral Commissioner Sven Bluemmel. Sven, good to see you again.
Good to see you again too, Chris.
Welcome back to VLGA Connect. So tell me, this report, it's the result of many months of work. Are you happy with how it's all come together?
Yeah, very happy with how it's come together, and happy with how the election went as well. There's always opportunities for improvement, of course, but it was actually the biggest postal election ever conducted in Victoria, and we had a really good turnout rate, a very low informality rate. So we're really pleased with that.
What was the turnout figure off the top of
The
your head?
turnout figure was actually the 1/100% of what we had previously.
Is that right?
What we had, it was 81.46% turnout compared to 81.47% in 2022. And if we remember where we all were at the same time in 2020, everyone was home, everyone was checking their mailbox. To be able to maintain that momentum, we're really pleased about.
What do you put that down to? That's obviously a success factor out of these elections.
Yeah, for us, while it was pleasing and in some ways surprising, we worked really hard at it. So what we actually did was, in the lead up to local government elections, we worked really proactively with the community, but also with media, well before the election, just to get that momentum going. We find that in a state election, of course, that there is always during the campaign a very high level of saturation media. Quite rightly, it's extremely important. We don't see that to the same level with local government elections. So what we're trying to do, given how important we see local government elections to be, is that we try and then now work much more proactively with the media to get that message out. And I think we've had some success.
Yeah, terrific. Well done. What was a particular challenge, perhaps, or challenges for you with these elections that you, I guess, have top of mind for improving on next time around?
Yeah, look, a couple of things. One is, overwhelmingly, we're just really conscious that we're stretching the letter business of Australia Post. As I said, we're very happy with how we delivered these elections, and we work very closely with Australia Post, who really work closely with us too to deliver a good service. And so, on that level, how things went last year, really happy with that. But we're just really conscious of how much more we're stressing that business. If you can imagine, of course, 15, 20 years ago, all of us actually got and sent much more physical mail than we do now. It's no secret that the Australia Post letter business model has declined quite substantially because of the demand decreasing as well, while at the same time, of course, the parcel business has gone up and is going very strongly. What that means for us is our local government elections, which are fully postal, are increasing as well in terms of the sheer number of people that are voting, about 4.6 million. But at the same time, the baseline capability of Australia Post has been declining, so that the spike that we represent with local government elections compared to the baseline, that spike is bigger and sharper than before. Now, again, we're working closely with Australia Post to make that work, but we can just see in the medium to longer term that challenge is going to be harder and harder. That's for us the really big thing.
Because you really don't have an alternative, do you? Or can you see a future time where you do have an alternative to using Australia Post?
Well, one of the things that we're recommending in the report is that we actually look at other options. And one of the recommendations we've made is actually about it's a recommendation to government to consider putting in place legislation that would allow us more flexibility, particularly through things like electronic voting. Now that's been getting a bit of attention, and I think some of that commentary is getting a bit ahead of itself, suggesting that, oh, great, next time it's all got to be on our phones or online. I mean, that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is, at the moment, we're in a position where we can deliver the election successfully, but we're straining the postal system. So let's now start thinking about what might come next, rather than being in a position where we go, we've got an election in 6 months. We've just been told that we can't rely on the postal service to deliver the whole election. Now we're at panic stations. We want to do this before we're at panic stations. And in the recommendation, I specifically say that government should consider having that sort of dialogue with the community about what could replace it in an electronic way. So we're a fair way away from that, but we want to do it before it's too late.
Yeah, makes sense. And I guess we don't have electronic voting at other levels of government. So to be potentially a bit of a test case, do you think, at the local level?
Look, it could be. And the other thing I just want to clarify is that we're not calling for this to be replaced with electronic voting. We're saying the current system's under strain. We need to start looking at alternatives, and that needs a long runway. It's a particularly acute issue for local government because Currently, all local government elections in Victoria are fully postal. So, and there's a huge spectrum here of what could replace it or enhance it, I should say. So yes, at one end of the spectrum would be complete online voting. Now I think we're quite a long way away from that. There's all sorts of technical and identity challenges there that would need to be worked through. But there's also other aspects of it. So, for example, at the moment at state level, what one can do in certain circumstances is telephone assisted voting. And that is actually, under the legislation, a form of electronic assisted voting. So we've got a separate recommendation in the report that says that should be replicated at local government level. Now, that's quite small in terms of numbers, but for those people who use it, which is mainly people who experience visual disability or restriction, for them, the feedback we get from that is actually excellent. They like the service. So looking at even that as a start, and it may well be that we look at particular cohorts to test this out and so forth, but we do have to go very carefully here, because I know many people are familiar with other kinds of online voting for board directors and all of those sorts of things from shareholders, fine. But what we're talking about with elections, state or local, is we're talking about electing the people who make and enforce our laws. And that just puts it in a different level of needing to be rigorous.
Yeah, that's a good point that you make. It'll be very interesting to see how that one evolves over time. I know one of the other recommendations that's got some attention is you're suggesting that candidates should declare their political affiliations in some way so that voters are more informed. Where's that recommendation coming from? What's behind that?
Yeah, we've had a lot of feedback from that from the community. In the candidate questionnaire that candidates get, they are asked whether they are formally endorsed by a political party, but they're not asked whether they are a member of a political party. And as we're seeing, say, for example, in New South Wales, where that sort of thing is declared more, it's required to be declared more, and people can then take that into consideration in making an informed decision. Because even if you're not actually formally endorsed by a party, but you're a member of a party, that may come with certain obligations of membership in terms of how you behave, what your policy positions are, whom you will support, and so on. And we've heard strongly from the community that they would like to know that about their candidates, should there be a membership, let alone a formal endorsement.
Another recommendation that caught my eye, Sven, I haven't seen too much discussion about this, is you're talking about perhaps moving towards provisional voting information being made available. It was quite some time for some of those results to be ultimately declared last time. Was there a bit of frustration that you picked up on about the amount of time it took and the lack of information in the interim period?
There was a bit of frustration, and it's understandable. I mean, everyone wants to know the result, or even provisional results, as soon as possible. As do we. I mean, we want to get through the process as quickly as possible. For us, one of the things we always say is, first and foremost, it's got to be accurate. And then speed comes subordinate to that, and that will not change. But yes, we certainly sense some frustration. Being a fully postal election, of course, we have to bear in mind that, as we saw last time, and as I think we see at every postal election, is that the volumes of voting right towards the end of the period really spike, when people think, oh, it's tonight, I better, on the Friday, I better get my vote in. What that means is that we actually then have to wait for another week for the mail to come in, provided it was sent before election day. And therefore, what it means is that we're not really in a good position to have a really substantial count until the second one comes in. Now, we do start with Group 1, but it's important to note that unlike an attendance election like state election, where we have a lot of on-the-day votes and a lot of earlier votes that can be counted then and there on election night, in a postal election like this, we get so much volume in the week after. That's one frustration. The other frustration is also that, yes, our systems just do not allow currently for the flexibility we'd like to have to provide provisional reports and results earlier. We're looking at that. That's one of our commitments in the report, to try and lift that up for 2020.
So you do separate recommendations to the government, which I believe require some level of government commitment or legislative change to enact, from those operational commitments like the latter one you've just talked about. So there are some things that you are looking at doing as a matter of course before the next elections?
Oh, that's right. This is an example of that. Is the early account and publication? Oh, sorry, not the early account. The account is actually is well performed, but it's what can we publish and when.
Yes.
A lot of that is also, of course, dependent on workforce. It's quite a heavy, intensive process, as you can imagine. And one thing that's often forgotten is with the changes to local government structures and the increase in single council awards, we now have over 400 individual elections that actually make up a local government election, whereas previously we had about 260. So that's a huge change and really complicates the count as well, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
But yeah, we always, there's a couple of things we always do after every large election. One, of course, is provide a report to Parliament, which was released last week. The other one is that we constantly look at our own processes, systems, etc., and see how we can improve. This is one example.
Sven, I noticed Western Australia had their local government elections last weekend, and most, if not all, those councils have already been sworn in a few days after, and it was postal. So I know we're not comparing apples with apples here, but I wonder, do you look at how other jurisdictions run their elections and compare as to, and perhaps cherry pick the things that might help you improve your performance in the future?
Yeah, we absolutely do that, and we do that all the time. So both formally and informally. So formally, I'm a member of a group called the Electoral Council of Australia and New Zealand, which is myself and my counterparts in Australia and New Zealand, as the name suggests. We meet formally, but behind the scenes, as part of that sort of meeting, we also have a lot of relationships between our other staff who work across jurisdictions. And I mean, cherry picking is a really good example. We help each other out. There are certain things where one jurisdiction has had an investment ahead of time of the others, and they're able to help others out and so forth. It's not a competitive arrangement. It's very much a collaborative one. Let me give you one example of that. The next year's state election, we're going to have a much scaled up use of electronic roll mark-off, so that when people vote in person, rather than their name being looked up in a big book and their name gets crossed out, that will be done on a laptop used by the person. Not everywhere, but as much as we can. As you can imagine, that requires many thousands of laptops. Now, Queensland has been doing some of this for a while, and they're kindly lending us some of their laptops for us to do next year. We'll use it, we'll return them, and so forth. We'll have to obviously buy some of our own as well. But that's the kind of collaboration that happens all the time. And so we'll certainly be talking about the Western Australian local government election as well, and how we can always learn from each other.
That's a great story, great example you've just given us. Perhaps one more issue before I let you go. We had some results overturned. You detected some anomalies early in the piece. What does your report say about perhaps being even more on the ball with those sorts of issues in future?
Yeah, it's a challenging issue for us, but it's actually the one that I'm really pleased about. Now, I'm certainly not pleased that attempts at fraud are happening. What I'm so pleased about is that we invested really heavily in our processes and intelligence gathering and analysis before last year's local government election. And we found these two examples of fraud in two wards proactively. They weren't even a tip-off or anything like that. Our data and analysis, and I won't go into the detail of it, but we certainly said, hang on, there's something going on here. And we had some very good people we were able to deploy to that, saying, have a look at that. As you can imagine, time is absolutely of the essence there, because while we want to make sure that we get to the fraud issue, we also want to make sure that those people in that ward who are casting a legitimate vote are not disenfranchised by being caught up in it. So we have to act very, very fast. That's the sort of thing where we keep increasing our capability. And that went hand in hand with what we already talked about at the start, which is where we're doing a lot more proactive media engagement with the media now. So when we had something there, and once we knew what was going on, for the first time, we called a press conference and live, and I was there able to answer questions from all the major networks and radio and print to say this is what's happening. And that was a great way to send the message out there to say, not only are we on it, but if you're listening to this and you're thinking of doing something a bit dodgy here, don't do it, because we'll catch you, and you won't get away with it.
Yeah, good point. Well done. When are you expecting or hoping perhaps to get some response from the government on the recommendations you've put forward?
Look, it'll take some time. It'll take quite a few months in terms of government needing to work through that. Clearly, we've put as much in the report as we can in terms of how have we arrived at the recommendations so that they stand on their own. We'll, of course, engage with government now specifically on that. As you can imagine, quite a bit of that's quite complex. And as I said, with, say, electronic voting, what we're saying there is not move to electronic, let alone online voting. We're just saying, have a conversation, have a debate with the community, and look at what can be done, and then we'll stand ready to implement that with enough notice. That's really what happens from here on in.
Terrific. Well, it is a good read, especially for governance geeks like many of our viewers and listeners here at VLGA Connect. So thank you very much for the report, Sven, and for coming along and shedding some light on some of the issues that you've raised there. Enjoyed talking to you as always, and hope to see you again.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Chris.
Sven Bluemmel, the Victorian Electoral Commissioner, with us here on VLGA Connect. Well, it is a delight today to meet the Mayor of Strathbogie Shire Council, Claire Ewart-Kennedy, a first-time visitor to VLGA Connect. Hello, Claire. Welcome.
Good morning, Chris, and thank you so much for having me.
Lovely to meet you. First-time councillor, first-time mayor. How's that been for you this year?
Look, I'm really, really happy to say and very proud to be mayor. It wasn't certainly when I put my hand up, I certainly wasn't angling to be mayor, and it sort of came out of nowhere, but I'm really pleased I've done it. And I think it's a job everyone that is on council, if that's what they want, they should be afforded the opportunity. I don't think it's something that should always stay with the one person. So, but it's been challenging. We've had the perfect storm, like most regional councils, of drought, the ESFE legislation coming in, the VIC grid legislation. There's been obviously a lot of other things that are happening in councils, like the rollout of the purple bin. A lot of these stuff is state government, and we are purely the administrator or the collector in the state in the way of the ESFE.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we had in our community, and I'm sure I'm saying the same as a lot of other mayors and councillors, people who have been generally affected by the perfect storm of cost of living crisis and those other things I've mentioned. And we've had some real mental health and wellbeing concerns in our community, and we've taken those very seriously and done everything we can to try and support the community. It's not easy at the moment. I'm a farmer. We run livestock and broadacre cropping, and it's not easy. I think I have to say that one of the greatest things about running for council is actually being connected to community, and know that you are actually doing something every day that is making that community better and stronger and hopefully happier and, healthier.
And you've got a largely new council, nearly all new members of the council. So are they all there for similar reasons, do you believe?
Yeah, look, we've got an interesting mix, Chris. We've got the previous mayor is on, Laura Binks, and she's been fantastic. She's really got a wealth of experience. We've got Greg Carlson, who was there 18 years ago and has come back, and that has been fantastic to have that wise council for us new councillors. And then we've got one that was in Mitchell and has come after terms has come. That's Fiona Stevens, and the other three councillors, including my deputy, are all new like me. And the main reason everyone ran, and I can't speak for everyone, but we were so disappointed with what happened with the last council, and that's not at all any disparaging comment about the council, except to say that the community deserves better. The community deserves a functioning council. It's not that hard, and after nearly 12 months in it, I have to say we've got that. We've achieved. We've achieved ahead of time our council plan, all of the associated documents, the financial plan, the maternal health and wellbeing plan. I mean, everything we've done, we've worked through. We've done a lot of team development sessions about working with each other. Early on, we developed a very clear mission statement and values, and we've tried to make sure that they're front and center in everything we do. We don't always get it right. I'm the first one to say that. And sometimes decisions are really tricky, and sometimes they're a hangover from previous things, and we're the custodians, so we have to try and fix it. That I found really challenging. And I'm the first one to say I come from a strong media and political background. I've been a staffer for many years, and as well as a farmer. I grew up on a big cattle farm in northern New South Wales. Um, and it's challenging. Local government, I take my hat off to the exec team and the staff. Like, it's challenging. We've got to do so much with so little. And the smaller the council is, like Strathbogie, is even though our rates, I'm sure if someone said, oh, we're going to amalgamate all the councils, they're going to be putting up their hand to get Strathbogie because our
Yeah.
land is worth a lot. We just don't have enough ratepayers. We've got to,
Yeah.
that's the reality. But we've still got to deliver the same things under the legislative framework that every other council has to do. And
Yes.
so you're trying to do more with less all the time. And I know everyone gets sick of hearing this, but that is a genuine concern across the sector, financial sustainability. And we work very closely with our counterparts around the state to make sure that we're advocating for that on a regular basis.
What was the learning curve like for you? Were you expecting the broad and the depth of these challenges that you've just outlined, which just confirms that the role of a local councillor is perhaps far more complex than most people think going in?
Yeah, look, I have to be really honest and say it caught me off guard.
Mm.
I got home from a council meeting one night and there was a 70-plus-year-old farmer who'd turned off his lights. I was home at the farm by myself. So that's a bit challenging. He turned his lights on and I said, oh, what are you doing here? And he goes, oh, I just want to know, do I feed myself or feed my sheep? And I was like, that's the sort of stuff that and it becomes very personal because you genuinely love and care about so many people in the community and you care about the community. It's very tricky out there at the moment. And I do think the learning curve for me has been, don't ever lose your connection with the community. Don't ever take that for granted because that is the number one thing you need as an effective council and council group. To be connected, to be informed, to be real with your community. Be prepared to say, I don't know, I'll take that on board and I'll come back. Don't try and wing it because people are smart and they're
Yeah.
frustrated and they want answers. So that's been a big learning curve for me. And I've really taken that on board. I've loved being mayor, but I'm not sure that it's something that it's not for the faint-hearted and certainly not in a drought.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, look, you speak very well about those issues, and I think that helps perhaps people more broadly to understand the complexities and the challenges of the role. Let's talk
Yeah.
about some specific challenges. I know you've adopted a new advocacy strategy which picks up a lot of the priorities. You've been quite vocal on the ESVF fund in recent months, but also the VIC grid legislation. Does it feel like a bit of a perfect storm of these issues that are sort of stamping down on local communities?
It sounds, I mean, I don't want to be the whinging farmer thing. I mean, I grew up as a farmer's daughter and I was like, I remember saying to my dad, I'm never marrying a farmer. I'm never living on a farm and I'm never driving a Volvo. And
So
I've
never
done
say
all
never.
of them. I've done all of them. And the best thing I've done is move our family and my husband and I have moved permanently back to the farm. And I wouldn't have it any other way. I love it. But the perfect storm of, we currently have a power station on our farm, one of our farms. We had a very expensive racehorse. This is years ago before the legislation came in, and it was let out. It nearly died. And it wasn't really the fault of the electric contractors. I'm not having a go at them, but it's just the fact that there's this, infrastructure that's required, but you've got to communicate with the farm.
Yeah.
And we've now got a good relationship and they always ring us and they text us and email us and say, we need to come onto your farm and do this. That VIC grid legislation is strong-arming farmers. If you did that in Metro, you would have people out in the streets protesting because, you can't just walk onto someone's property and say, if you don't let us on, we're going to fine you 12,500 and more.
Yeah.
So that I found that on the back of the ESV insulting, and it's so easy to communicate to people. So communicate. Farmers want to talk. If you get them in a room, you can't shut them up. So take that opportunity. Go to the cattle sales. Go to clearing sales, go to the places where they are, go to the local pubs, go to the footy grounds and talk to them and make it easy for them to say, okay, you need access to my property. I'm happy to do that. Just let me know how you want to do it. You don't need to threaten fining people. That's not okay.
So, all 79 councils are talking with one voice, particularly about the Emergency Services Fund levy. We do have a state election next year, and I know the numbers in terms of representation aren't great for rural areas in terms of where the power sits. What sort of hope do you have that you might see some traction on these issues, either leading up to the election or beyond?
Yeah, look, I'm not going to make a political statement because it's that local government doesn't really have a role in that. But what I would say is there's a lot of anger out there, and people are tired of being constantly put on for more tax, more collections. It shouldn't be the role of local government to be collecting state government tax. That's what the State Revenue Office is for. We as a group, so we met at Municipal Association of Victoria last week, and we did various council motions. All of ours got up, and I've been the chair of the Hume region this year, and we put 5 motions up, four of which got up. The other one was absorbed into something else. But what was really interesting is one of our motions was actually put forward and seconded by metro councils, and that was about planning and keeping it local. And that I found really interesting. So, and they amended it to include all Victorian councils. So you've got a voice now of 79 councils that are saying, actually, we're not happy that we're being jammed in to respond to these queries after the fact. All we're asking is for an opportunity to work with the government. And I think if Jacinta Allen or, whoever came out, I think they've realised how committed these people are to the land, to their businesses. I mean, a big shout out to local businesses. They're doing it tough too. And, if farmers aren't spending in country towns, then businesses hurt. And that's the reality. And so we're in a situation now at the moment with the legislation that the state government is pushing forward with. People are angry, and they've said there's a moratorium on the increase for farming properties until next June. Personally, I think it's very tricky to try and lift that moratorium in an election year, but that's not a political statement. That's just a reality of fact. So I'd be very interested to see where it lands.
We're running out of time, but I do want to ask you quickly about 2 other things. You recently introduced a new registration system for your council meetings for in-person attendance. You're not the first council to do this, but just quickly, why and how's it going so far?
Largely why is that if people come along, we know who's in the chamber, and if they have queries or they've submitted a question or that, then we can actually progress that appropriately. Also, there's obviously a safety issue for everyone. If we know where they're there, they know where they're there. It's not compulsory. If people don't want to do it, they don't have to do it. So I think that's important. But we think it's the right thing to do. And certainly the external advice we got was that that's the right thing to do. So that's the way we're progressing. But we're not in the business of strong arming. If people don't want to do it, they don't have to.
Well, that's good to hear. Okay, good approach. And I noticed recently Murrumbidgee Shire got some money for one of the bridges that had been washed out. Was an important access point between Acheron and Alexandra. But their mayor said it's not enough really to build back better, which is what the community should be expecting. You've got a similar issue with Kerwin's Bridge that's been closed for 3 years now, and you're needing funding to get that restored. Is there any update on how you're travelling with that?
So we recently put in for a grant, which we were unsuccessful, which was really disappointing. We're progressing it as much as we can. We're working really hard. We've gone back to the minister's office to say, look, how do we not get this grant? There's a lot. We've actually, as a council, have committed to putting some money towards it as well. And we've advocated with state. I've advocated with federal. I've spoken to both Sam Birrell, Helen Haynes, Annabelle Cleland, all our local members. We're going up to Canberra next week. Myself and the CEO will be advocating really heavily for that. And what the advocacy strategy that you mentioned, I really want to make this very clear. We are a strong economic development focused council. We want to encourage businesses. We want to encourage development. We want to encourage productivity and opportunity in our area for the children that are there, so they don't have to leave to have a career. They can stay in the area they grew up with. They're the sort of things. And we've got amazing businesses over $1 billion of money is transacted in Strathbogie regarding the equine industry alone in a year. Just get your head around that. Like that's a lot of money. So I suppose what I would say is advocacy has been an absolute focus of ours. And I'm really, really proud that we've got the advocacy strategy for Strathbogie, but also for Hume Local Region Government Network. We've got an advocacy clear path for that. And we've been working with RDA, which I sit on their committee. And it's been a really busy year getting all those focuses and advocacy points in line. Kerwin's Bridge, it needs to be rebuilt. Simple as that. And as a councillor, I will never, ever back down from that.
Claire, I can see why your colleagues have chosen you to be mayor. Do you want to keep being mayor at some point? Either.
That's very nice of you to say, and I'm very fortunate to have a good council group. I really believe that everyone should be given an opportunity if that's what they want. I can't see myself putting my hand up for another term. Right. But if the council group go, we really want you to do it and no one else wants to do it, I'd contemplate it. But I think we've got so many people on our council who would make great mayors. Give them an opportunity. I've had to go. Excellent. I've had a year.
Good on you. Well, I mean, your passion for Strathbogie is obvious and you speak so very well about those issues. So I really appreciate your time. We could talk for ages and I'd love to have you back perhaps to talk more about some of those issues in the future. Thank you, Claire.
No worries. Thank you, Chris. Have a great day.
Claire Ewart-Kennedy, the Mayor of Strathbogie Shire Council, with me today on VLGA Connect. Thank you to Claire and thank you to Sven Bluemmel, my guests today here on VLGA Connect. I hope you've enjoyed the program today. A quick reminder to councillors in Victoria to complete that councillor census that is in your inbox. If you haven't dealt with it already, you have until the end of the month to do so. And that's coming around very quickly indeed. Go back a couple of episodes of VLGA Connect to see my chat with Catherine Arndt and John from Kudos Research about how the survey is conducted and how it will be used. That's all we have for you for this week. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or podcast to make sure you don't miss future episodes of VLGA Connect, sponsored by Hunt & Hunt Lawyers. Bye for now.